SalvaKirr has maintained that cargo transported to South Sudan is still going to be cleared by Hassan Joho-linked company. In this episode, we are looking at the potential of our revenue stream to serve the SGR loan as politics of the port takes a center stage. This is Bold Analysis, and my name is Kevin Oduor. Salva Kiir, the South Sudan president, met with President William Samoei Ruto last month. I think it was first week of December, if I'm not wrong. And in that event, President announced that they had made a move that I want us to look at. Juba pushed Kenya to support a lucrative deal that has seen Autoport Freight Terminals Limited handle South Sudan imports at its Nairobi Freight Terminal, NFT. The man behind it is former Governor Ali Hassan Joho's brother, who operates within the space. Kipchumba Murkomen sent a communique from the ministry, informed Kenya Ports Authority and Kenya Railways that Autoport Freight Terminals Limited will continue to be the sole handler of South Sudan cargo, according to a letter seen by us here. This is a conversation that we've had for some time, and Hassan Joho was a strong critic of William Ruto during the campaigns, was seen as if he was going to fall victim to a revisit scheme by the current president, William Samoei Ruto. So what exactly is in the deal, and why do you think that deal was immovable or it could not be altered? That Autoport won the South Sudan contract because of its deal with Kenya Railways, that Kenya Railways offered it a terminal at the Nairobi Inland Container Depot, ICD, which is connected to the SGR and allowed the easy evacuation of cargo from the Mombasa port. Initially, this deal was in limbo. Back in September, when President Ruto signed what was a political paper deal to revert all operations and clearance of cargo, both from Nairobi and Naivasha depot, back to Mombasa. Remember, apart from the fact that in this deal, the NFT was actually receiving the goods from Mombasa, they're loaded in the wagons, and then clearance is done in Nairobi. So the reason why South Sudanese, the strength that was there is because NFT has, the freight terminals have, actually it's just the normal customs freight stations. These custom freight stations are licensed by Kenya Ports Authority, and they're just extensions of the Kenya Ports clearance offices based in Mombasa. But because the Mombasa port is serving other landlocked countries in East Africa, Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, and DRC, these terminals, or rather these custom freight stations, are helping to decongest Mombasa port. Even though to the residents of Mombasa, or the business operatives within Mombasa, the decongestion was going against their will, because that means less activities at the coast, and that's why they were complaining that work had gone down. But of course, it was just an extension. So the reason why South Sudan was comfortable with Autoport is because Autoport have a terminal here in Nairobi. So in that deal, when and you need to get this explainer right. When operations were taken back to Mombasa, it means that the SGR was a bit affected. But with that autoport, with the autoport deal, meant that they were going to, just the same way you are going to carry your goods with the road, but then when they're clearing with the transport charge, but specifically they have a contract to also transport using the SGR. So because they have a potential for transporting a huge amount, tons of goods, they are maximizing the returns on the SGR. So this is a give and take. Remember, it's coming after some time because the initial report was that that tender was at the risk of being called off or rather terminated. So what happened? I want you to see what exactly, because someone is asking, why do you think South Sudan insisted on that company? Is it South Sudan or so? There also reports that Raila Odinga and former President Uhuru Kenyatta were also roped in negotiations to make sure that this deal stays. From what I see, SalvaKirr insisted that if they are not going to be allowed to use that autoport, and they must then operate from Mombasa because they objected the Naivasha, the reversal of activities, then they threatened that they were going to withdraw from Mombasa port and instead use the Djibouti port, which according to report, it's even shorter. The distance between the moving goods from the Djibouti port to South Sudan is shorter than even this one of Kenya. But that is why even President Ruto, and I was wondering, why are we showing some kindness to South Sudan? President Ruto also promised Salva Kiir that they were going to be given land in Mombasa to build a dry port. Because I was reading the article, is because also South Sudan have also been offered, I think, a dry port somewhere in Djibouti. So walikuwa wanang'ang'ania. From what I see here, the Hassan Joho team could have got a deal, and they went and spoke, or rather pocketed the South Sudanese exporters team, and the people that then pulled the trigger. Because as things stand, that was one of the conversations. And the potential is big because Mombasa Port activity is an entry. Mombasa Port is an entry point to goods in those other countries. I was just looking at data. Uganda accounts for the lion's share, 83.2% of goods going to Tanzania using the port. DRC Congo and Rwanda account to 7.2%. Remember, Rwanda also have an option of using the Tanzania port, so they beat others that are using, they're also moving some of their goods through the Tanzanian port. Then 3.2, that is Rwanda and Tanzania is at 3.2 and 2.4 consecutively. South Sudan accounts to 9%. They transport 9% of their goods. And in September, South Sudan said that it acquired 3 acres of land in Djibouti for the construction of a dry port, and as it sought to cut over reliance at the port of Mombasa. What is really happening here is, apart from the fact that the Nairobi Inland Depot and Naivasha is also killing the activity in those two, was going to affect what I can call the revenue stream to help us pay the SGR. And remember, we are going back to SGR financiers to give us another loan so that we can also implement another ambitious plan to extend it to Kisumu and Malaba, which I totally support, even though it has its own, there is fair share of politics of the day, but this is a deal that we really see well. Now, other exporters, and we also need to put up this, other exporters are being asked that they need to move their goods through the SGR. And that is what has caused a bit of that friction, because remember, there is an exporter who is having a supply chain, a product, maybe here in the country. For example, if you run a supply chain if you run a maize supply chain and you're an exporter, most probably you can have your own trucks and you can move your stuff through your trucks. But forcing them to use some of them, of course, SGR is less cheaper compared to the trucks. But a rule that you have to move your stuff through the SGR is what had caused a problem, because many people were saying that they even acquired loans to run the supply chain, to acquire the trucks, get those trucks, and those trucks are supposed to then give the money when they move the goods. But then there seems to be a contestation, and I think President Ruto and the relevant authorities, should look into this so that this is harmonized. An exporter who can move his goods to Ukundani should just be allowed. There is another aspect, because I've been following this issue of Mombasa, and one aspect that also plays out is the corruption. Now, there are other veteran exporters and people who have known on ways they can evade the taxman within Mombasa, because that's where they've done business for long and they have their own networks and contacts there. And they would not, unlike when the customs is cleared, maybe somewhere in Nairobi or Naivasha, where the steps there, those are private entities. They're not really for government mostly, even though they're licensed. Just like they're licensed because they collect customs on behalf of government, just like the others. So, with this, President Ruto should look at it as also a solution to even curb corruption. When everything else is congested in Mombasa port, the challenge here is they can even be overwhelmed. Remember, KPA is also going through some other challenges. They can be overwhelmed, and when they're overwhelmed, it becomes a breeding site for people that want to evade the taxman, and Kenyan loses. That is why even our administration had to really get down with the South Sudanese team to make sure that they don't leave. Because if they leave, if they stop using Mombasa port, what happens? It's us who are going to lose, because what Kenya benefits from is the customs, the money, the taxes that we collect there. So it's us that are going to be hurt because of reduction in taxes. I want to humbly request you to subscribe to our channel, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for those who support us in every way. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Yes, back here in Kenya. I don't know, how is your place? How are you going to celebrate Christmas? Me, I'm going to be at home. I want to say what could have played out, that there is a probability that Ruto might have dropped the revisit scheme and Mgala Hakimpe. This is a good move. We were saying that we didn't need to go that way, because it brings the spirit of winner takes all. When I have a perception that if I'm not in government, then my things cannot go on one, it works against the spirit of winner. Against the spirit of winner takes all. So Ruto might have developed that, and that is why Hassan Joho might have really taken a backseat, taking a tactical retreat. Remember, this is a man that was a critic of former President Uhuru Kenyatta. For the Kenyans, there's some few lessons we need to learn. That don't, at the campaign trail, you look at it as if the person X hates person Y. That's not normally it. Let me tell you, interests normally converge. Interests converge. And watu wanaweza pigana nje. So don't shout at your neighbor and feel really rogue because of this and that, because of politics. At the end of the day, politicians stay together. There were reports that Raila team could have negotiated this. And remember, even this is a business that has been there for all across the other regimes, and they found a way of making sure things go on. So to some extent, I see there is a bit of truce coming down. There's a truce coming, and the political anger that was probably perceived there may not be available. It may not really be the order of the day. So what stops Raila Uhuru Kenyatta to just call William Ruto to order and say this and that needs to be this? even if it means high level engagement, then why not? I can say that revisit was causing a public backlash. You know, some of these politicians, some of these revisit schemes were hurting other interests, and interests are converging. Some other interests are converging in the sense that some of these people are people that work together in some kakunso, some groups, and they can regroup against you. But the backlash here is this: we've had freedom, and we have a mantra as administration that we don't want to destroy people's businesses. It's if you follow up this, you realize this is a very big business. This is a very big empire that you don't just wake up the next day and destroy. And if you destroy, it's going to be very disruptive. It will always fight back. If mtu anafanya kazi mahali and today you wake up and say this is not it. I was reading a story about, I think I was just following a story about Bangladesh on how the wetlands are getting consumed by private developers who are coming over to establish their the residential houses, and the government is trying to do a crackdown, but the people that are scrambling for those pieces of land, or rather they're calling them corrupting their ways through it, has become too tight that now government seems to have let people do what they want. So that exactly will be it. Your team reached out to SalvaKirr, and I want to believe, as much as this deal could be negotiated on Kenyan side, and also maybe the Chinese team coming to play, that look here, if this is done, we're going to get a loss and the loan might not be paid. But there is a possibility that the interest also might have gone to SalvaKirr to negotiate and use SalvaKirr to make sure that Ruto is brought into order in terms of this. All in all, I think this is a good move. We don't need to revisit because of politics. And at the end of the day, the biggest interest here was to make sure that we serve the SGR loan, service the SGR loan, as we plan to extend it to the next level. Guys, that's my take.